Hello and welcome to this Total Pro Vocal Track tutorial. I'm your host and instructor, Marcus Unlimited. This is going to be a massive multi-part tutorial wherein we show you how to build from the ground up all of your mixer settings, your perfect usage of effects, synthesizer, custom synthesizer programming, integration, hybrid parameters, you name it, from the ground up, totally professional. My album's just as a little credibility statement. I know that you're awesome and you're tuning in, but you're learning this from someone who has 9 successful independent albums. These are complete themed albums. They've been selling around the world and now moved into the streaming thing since the first day I released them. Actually, they used to do pretty well on when they were homemade CDs back in the day, prior to the iTunes and then now the streaming thing taking over. And so this means that you're going to be learning stuff that actually does work all the way through the professional level, and have multiple publishing deals and all this stuff like that. So for some reason, I'm still on the Mozart barely survival budget, but hoping one day that changes. But anyways, these are actually financially functional results here. With some pretty good acclaim behind them and such like that. So you are going to be learning all of those unlimited secrets right here in this. And this is our first step. We're going to create a professional vocal track template. We're going to construct that here, and you can reuse this template for your entire album. I realized this needed to happen because I'd come across many reason files from some very talented folks, but they weren't using the capabilities of the programs, the effects routings, the inner working of the patches of the devices. I'm like, my God, these folks are doing some cool work, but in some cases, and this is of course not all. This is of course not all. We always have to remember, you might be a journeyman now in something, but someone else is a new apprentice or halfway through the program apprentice. And I remember what I'm going to show you here in this, how we set up our effects returns. I remember one time I didn't know how to do this as a kid, even though I was pretty adept with this stuff in the engineering. Oh, it's not, no, no, you don't route one device through an effects thing. Like, you only do that for like special occasions. You don't, a lot of people come from the guitar pedal background. You don't run effects like that in an amazing mixing board like this. You only do that occasionally when you want like this unusual thing to happen on this one setting. So to get your professional mix, we're going to show you how to do that. So here we are. Let's go ahead and jump into this. And if you ever want to use the song information window where you get to put some text information and website, it's just under File, scroll down to Song Information, and you get this to work with. Okay, so as you can see, we have absolutely nothing set up, and that's exactly what we want here. So for starters, let's get some test tones to play with our effects initially, and that means we're going to go over here to Instruments, and I'm just going to bring a subtractor, one of my favorite things in here, on in. And of course, it's going to come up with that nice bass sound. Very cool. But you know what? We want to go really official test tone. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to choose Reset Device. And I'm going to bring this up to a sine wave. There we go. And you'll hear that magical A440. For people who have ever worked with oscilloscopes that have tones and stuff, very familiar sound there. In fact, let's give ourselves just a little bump in volume there. There we go. Pretty cool. Okay, nothing too fancy there, and we don't want that. We want to hear what our effects are doing with nothing before we have something too colorful in them. Okay, so now we have something to test our effects routings. And the next thing we're going to do, and the great thing about this setup we're doing, remember, you can save this as a template and work on it throughout an entire production, whether it's an independent film or a big film. I've heard this stuff used on big stuff. This could be a huge film. This could be a record company-based album. This could be an independent album. You could reuse this template once you get the initial template set up perfectly with all these routings and everything over and over again. There's a lot of different ways to do that. We'll show you how. So let me click up here to open up our mixer setting, and we notice that it added a channel for the subtractor beautifully. Okay. Now, if you are new to this, if you do not have the way that I'm going to do this mastered, I strongly recommend that, in fact, do this. Okay. choose the exact same effects in the way and the order that I choose them first, master that, and then over time you can experiment and come up with your own procedures for yourself on how you want to approach this. Even if I choose one of the older units, you're going to see me choose a mix of older units and newer units. There are reasons for that, but for right now, for the most part, if you're beginning with this or you haven't done this type of effects return setup before, do exactly as I lay it out for you because it's proven. Let's not do any. I'm not going to do any experimentation on you. I've already done the experimentation. It works. I'm giving it to you because you're here and you're a subscriber, right? And you've liked, right? And you're going to like more, right? Okay. All right, so let's go in here and we're going to come in here because I was actually going to release this on one of those pay for the tutorial sites. And it's a pretty cool site, but I said, you know what? I think I'm going to take a chance. I'm going to see if this can really bump my channel to the next level in terms of, hopefully some income here because I've been focused on being, one of them high artists and everything like that, which is cool. But I realized there's one place where we all meet in terms of popularity and me being able to do my thing at full level, and that's in teaching. I love teaching. Okay, so now I right-clicked on effects return, and one thing that people might do is they might come down here to effects, right? Well, don't do that. Unless, of course, you're going to choose create send effects here. So you can start this way instead, just to build this habit. We're going to come down to create send effects because I don't want to confuse by going and thinking that it's under effects, okay? I'm going to do this over and over again because I want you to see how to do this because I've seen many recent files where this is not how people have their effects set up, and I want you to know this power, this hidden power, okay? So I'm going to choose right click and I'm going to scroll down to create send effects. It bumps these in. I'm going to come over here and let's see. Does it do anything when we single click? No, because it wants us to make sure that we know what we're doing. And we're going to go double click. Ba-bam! It threw the compressor not only in our rack, the Comp 01 half unit Boss, reminds me of those cool Roland Boss units, and we're going to talk about that in a second, into our effects return number 1. Now, you might say, Marcus, isn't there some giant brand new super clean compressor thing or whatever? Okay, in the mixing board, yes, they have this outstanding. I'm going to scroll up here. We have our dynamics. You can see we have this compressor up here. I'm going to leave this off right now. It says compressor disabled. Even over here, master compressor. I'm going to leave this off for right now. Again, we want to get the body of that Lamborghini, that engine. We want to get that engine working before we put the exterior body on, okay? So we have our channel compression up there, and it's great. The reason I love having this in the number 1 spot is because it is a compressor with its own character. It has a special character, and it reminds me of those Boss units. And because we are doing it this way, remember, we came here and we went right-click, create send effects, so it put it into a send and return attachment to our effects returns here. Send and return, it created a send, and this is where the effects return. Kind of, old school studio terminology there, very effective. Because every channel we add now, we join our effects send to this return. So now we have the number 1 spot. Now it's off. Now it's on. It's made a connection. And this is what I love. We can decide how much of this character-based compressor we want. So let me play our test tone with nothing for a second. So there we get that. And you'll notice as I start to increase it, we get a little bit of a level increase. Okay? And I just jacked it all the way through the roof so you can hear it. And this really comes in handy when we have sounds. You hear it affecting a sine wave, but when we have things that have these really, really subtle expressive dynamics, it is really powerful because that way you can get at tonal textural nuances, but they don't get buried and lost in the mix. And another thing that I love about this is see your activity level, you know, you can decide, well, I want it to interplay. I really have some things on here where there's a lot of dynamics, and I want the interplay of the compressor to be really minimal, like just to help even out the levels a little bit. Then of course you can bring it in this much, and in fact you even have the option of no. But we human beings, even with all this technology, there are certain rules about the physics of sounds even when we're going extreme on things, like for instance, you know how like as I record this now, there's been a big trend about dubstep. Okay, you think dubstep is some new thing in few recent years, but here's the funny thing. Guess what one of the main properties of it is? FM synthesis from the old DX7 TX81Z days. Prior to that, created at Stanford University way back in the days. And that's how you get those that hard growling, which actually you can do in Reason. This track probably is not going to include that, but there probably definitely will be some FM synthesis. We're going to use more of a classy, elevated version of it, even though dubstep is cool. So you know what I mean. So it's like you know you might think it's cutting edge new right now, but it actually goes back quite a way. And the other thing is that that beat ratio they use, those are triplets. Okay, so like you're going along, boom, smack, bow wow wum smack. Okay, what's happening there is that bow wow wum. That's actually going into triplets, and triplets are weird. Triplets. You're talking way old school musical concept back to when they were using pen quills on paper and everything like that. So you see what I mean? So whenever we say something like old school, be sure you know that it's also the key to managing the new school at its highest order. So our compressor is set up here, and we may not necessarily need that speech on every one of these units, but since this is our first one. So let's bring this, one of my favorite default places to leave this is right there at about the halfway point. It's on, but it's at the halfway point, and we can make any adjustment to it we want. Same procedure now. The next one to add is the ultimate chorus concept. You think I'm going for the chorus flanger? No. This is how you fatten your tracks. We are going to go right click there, right where we want it, and we're going to go create send effects. And you see, boom, this highlighted the magical Reason orange color. We're going to click on this. No, 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 no. Okay, we're going to come down here to the unison and widen these puppies out. Ba-bam. There we go. Double clicked, fired the unison into the number 2 spot. Now, the unison, oh man, I'm telling you, when you have this in your return, so now we're going to go to our little test tones. I think I'm going to play this chord for a second. In fact, since I'm going to be adding chords, I should back this off to its original volume there. What is it, about 80 or something? Okay, so now we have this. Take a listen to what happens when we start adding the unison. You see how it just fattens that thing out? And we also can go into the unison. I love how it uses only a half rack. In fact, for visuals, remember, since we get the benefit of using this, I just want these things in some sort of logical order with these. So I always go, okay, I want to go affect this one. I'm going to jump over here. We can click edit, but that way when I'm scrolling, when this is number 1, this is number 2, you think no big deal now. What about when we have 50 instruments in this, okay? So we have the maximum voice count. We have some detuning, but let's just show you. That's what's available in terms of width. We're probably going to go back to this how it was, but I want to show you. And now I can say I want the maximum width, but I only want it affecting the tone. Here, let me actually back this off live. There we go. So now we have maximum width. Now, one of the things I love about it kind of creeping, you hear how it's kind of, parts of it are trying to want to creep out of tune a little bit. Not all of it though. And that's because, remember, we're not saying take this whole thing and just widen the living. Instead, we're saying we want a little bit of movement on it. Guess what this simulates? This simulates a little bit what happened with those great giant tape machines that used to be in studios. The tapes don't always, even heat. I even heard something recently. Tried to isolate a track from a Queen record, and of course you hear Freddie's, great rock voice and everything like that. But the thing about it was you could hear track bleed. That's because over time the heat works on those reels, and every time those magnetic heads hit it, it starts to work. And there's also erosion and stuff. So we just brought in a little bit of some natural erosion here. How much erosion do we want? Little wobble. How long have we had this big giant 2-inch tape sitting out here in the shed with a little sunlight on it? We'll decide. How about something like this? Okay, so that's really, really affecting it. But I'll tell you what, I think I liked our, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo this until we get, there we go. We got our detune back to this. And I'm going to come over here to this level, kind of its default setting. And I usually use this at about the halfway-ish mark there too. Remember, as a default, okay? So now, in number 3, in the effects return here, I'm going to right-click, and this is where we get into the new school. Man, I love what they did with this thing. This is such a great unit. We're going to come down here. I'm going to right-click, come on down to Create Send Effects. Remember, not effects. Create Send Effects. Create Send Effects. We get our highlight over here letting us know where we're at, and I want... There it is. There it is. Yeah, and we get the name of the effect in there instead of the RV. So we have all plate spread, which gives us, let's find out what it gives us. So here's our test tone. Come in here and switch this on. We get a little something. Get a little something. Usually this one I have a little bit more of this. Okay. And this is not my favorite effect in here. Let's take a look. We can either go through it this way, or the new browser organizes these pretty nicely. I think for this, so some of these first, all first, that lets you know the very, very general purpose. Let's go ahead and click on this. And since it's not highlighted in the unit, we're going to bring it right into there. And that way we know it's going to the right place. Pretty decent room. I like to have this third one for what I like to call my medium to small reverb, and then we're going to come out here on number 5 and really drop some stuff. In fact, sometimes usually 5 and 6 is where I reserve things for things like distortion or unusual things, but I don't think we're going to run that on this one. I just want these main 3 I've shown you. I always run this pattern, and I want you to do that too if you are new to this, okay? So we have some other ones. You know what one of my favorites is for vocals, since we know this is going to be vocals, and we know that in this case the guy over here has some operatic training. They actually have one. Believe it or not, they built a reverb model of the Metropolitan Opera, that's what's called the Met. So we're going to bring this here and drop this right there. There we go. And you'll notice, okay, it's so funny, but I used to work in an opera. Okay, like when we would run like certain sounds, it's so funny. It sounds just like that, where there's like the main body of the sound, and as I let it, there's a little something, but it's not absurd. Okay, so we have our Met setting there, and remember this is about Aristotle, so Aristotle. So we really got to bring some classic elements in. So the Metropolitan Opera reverb model, that is just awesome, man. And then I'm gonna come down here, and I want some timed delays on this. Okay, so right now our tempo is set up at 120. I believe we're gonna take a listen and play with some tempo values once we get the lead sheet part of this going. So we're gonna come over here, and I'm going to right click on effects return 4, and we're coming down to create send effects, learning this habit. Remember, a little repetition. The people that are the best at everything, lots of you figure Muhammad Ali probably did some push-ups, you know what I mean, probably did a few 100,000, so we're gonna come here and we'll go right click, create send effect. JS Bach probably practicing at that organ a little bit, you know what I'm saying. So we're gonna come down here, I'm gonna left click now, and we get our sweet devices over here, and the one that I want is the digital delay, and I want this old school one. Okay, so we have other things up here. It has the echo and all stuff like that. I want our boss style, Roland boss style digital delay. Okay, so I'm gonna come over here. So I want some character on this. We're gonna bring this boy, and we're gonna go ba-bam. There we go. Because we right clicked over here, chose create send effect, it popped this right into the spot for us. And if I play, we get nothing until we add our effect. And by the way, I've taken this out of absolutely pristine ASIO mode so that it works in conjunction with the feeds, all the different feeds going into the tutorial output. But don't worry about any of those pops and clicks. That's a special funky thing that's happening just for the tutorials, and we would simply go up to our preferences and choose the highest quality ASIO output under audio to get back to what we're going to use for the final export and when we get in there in the gameplay of our actually laying in parts and such. But it mainly only matters. Of course, we like it when, in fact, it builds a little funky latency, which makes my keyboard playing a little bit stranger than usual out here because there's a little bit of a, but not in ASIO mode. In ASIO mode, it goes to its full power, and it's just like wow, it reacts as quickly as playing a piano, which is awesome. So anyways, we have this specially set up to make sure everything gets to the tutorial. So we have our delay here, and now you hear hanging on because we added in. So here's nothing. Then was this, and the thing, one of the amazing things about having the send and return is we decide. Remember, some sounds, like we might want some tinkling bell just doing all this cool stuff. And then we might have like a bass sound or something. You see why this simple test tone is pretty cool, very versatile, and doesn't color things up yet. We might just want the bass just doing like just hardly any of this or nothing. So it has a little something on there, or we can say no. Sometimes bass is having a digital delay on the bass is kind of funky. We don't want. There we go. And we can also come in here and say none of this either. But you know what I almost always like to do with the reverbs, and I really recommend this, is have everything touching this reverb that you put in here. Just maybe like for a bass. So like up here, when we get into those lighter high, I got plenty of reverb on that. And then down here, that's too much. I don't want that hanging on in the low end, so I'm gonna just come down here. Here's nothing, and just barely nudge this boy there, right there. Okay, so. Okay, cool. So that's a good setting for a bass, but for right now, we just want everything general purpose. So we're going to go right back to our middle of the road here. And next up, we have situation number 5. Okay, so situation number 5 here, affects send, official terminology, affects return, so to say. This is where I want my special reverb. Okay, so the special reverb is like where we bring it on background vocals or like a really ethereal pad, and we're going to the RV Mark II again, but I'm gonna have a very different patch than this very standardized cool Metropolitan Opera thing here. Okay, so I'm gonna go right click there on the number 5, just keep things in line, know where we're at. Come down here to create send effects. Remember, it has to be create send effects. It could be very confusing. You might think that. Create send effects. And we're going to come over here, and this is one way of doing this. Remember, you could also, let me show you the other way since we've done this so many times. I'm going to come over here to 5, and I'm going to go, actually, should we show you? Yes, we'll show you this one. If you do end up here, and I'm only showing this to show you the other different way of doing it, I'm doing create send effects, and it's still going to bring us over to here anyways. So just make sure that it's always going create send effects, okay? And here we're going to bring in our RV Mark II. There we go. Double clicked it. It came up there. And now let's see. Let's bring it in, and it's going to give us this alt plate spread, okay? I want this one that is so, oh, there it is right at the top. If film score wasn't right at the top of the RV7000 patches, I would just come in here and I would type film and then press search, and there we go. It gives me the film score one. Okay, so let's choose, should we choose this one? Let's choose this one. Okay, so just my old standby there. So we're gonna go and drag this over to the new one, the alt plate spread, and now we have this. So now we have our super. We're calling this is our mortal reverb here, about as good as it gets for mortals too. The Metropolitan, and this is our like immortal. This is our so. There we go. Now we really have something to add on there, and of course, on low sounds, we really do not like too much of this because it really is designed to create these beautiful, on a film score, it would be great for lows, but this is my special, like, ethereal reverb set, though. So we're going to back this off just so that it's kind of we know that everything's at the 50% mark. Cool. Okay, so we have some good basic settings. In fact, this special boy, you know what? Let's just back it off a little bit because it's so huge. Okay, so now we have our basic effects set up established, and we have one subtractor in here. And before we get to the vocals, which we could get to that, we want to make sure our instrument's in place. Remember, we're doing a standard album style production, so this means we're going to have some instruments. So we are actually going to delay adding the audio tracks to our work just now because we're going to go through here and lay out our instruments. We're going to have an instrumental bed pretty much set up before we start adding audio tracks, okay? And this is the conclusion of our first tutorial in this series, this feature production series wherein we are showing you total vocal track production. So let's come down here to our song information, and we get to go here now, and I get to work on the next phase of things, okay, which you'll see in the next video. So Total Pro Vocal Track Tutorial, Professional Vocal Track Template Construction is now complete. Let us save our file, come down here, and there we are. We're in the right folder, our Aristotle folder, and we are going to go Actually, let me stick with my code terminology here. A10, S1, Aristotle, and we can't use a comma in our file, so logical fallacies. Version 1. Okay, so very cool. Saving our file, and we will see you on the next part.